Hey, this one hit different when I put it together. You're gonna want to stay till the very end, trust me. Hit subscribe if you're new. One click, it actually helps. My mom's jaw clicked when she gets mad, and I heard it before she even said a word. She was halfway up the porch stairs, dragging my dad and sister behind her like they were on leashes when the front door opened. And it wasn't me standing there. It was Darian Kwan. Tan slacks, tailored blazer, calm face. Behind him, two movers were wheeling in a long walnut conference table like this was the start of a team-building retreat. My name's Tobin Irving. I'm 58, close enough to 60, and what happened last month took me right back to being the easy kid in my family. My grandmother Rowena Hartwell had passed, and she left me this house. Not us, not the family, me, just me. And I sold it before anyone could try to rip it from under me. Quick note. Before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. And let's continue. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me rewind a few weeks. Rowena's house was a big old Victorian in Pasadena's Madison Heights neighborhood. Original woodwork, wraparound porch, the kind of place people slowed down to look at. Property like that doesn't sit around. It was worth about $1,080,000 on paper, but what it really meant to me was a way out. I'd been paycheck to paycheck for too long, one root canal or water heater away from drowning. Soon as the will was read, my phone blew up. My mom, Marla, with her sugar-slick voice. "Sweetheart, we think it's only fair." My dad, Gordon, with his cold logic. "Sell it and split. Everyone wins." And my sister Maris? She didn't even bother pretending. She just said, "You know I need this more than you." Need. That word again. She's always needed. Private school, internships, job favors. And she always got them. They didn't waste time. They started calling, texting, and pushing for a family meeting, like they could vote me out of my own inheritance. What they didn't know was the house had already sold, quietly, 5 days earlier. I had signed the deal with Darian Kwan, my old college classmate and the CEO of the same company where Maris had just talked her way into a promotion. Juniper and Stone. Yeah. Darian bought it through an LLC for $1,115,000, clean, above market. I got a below-market rent leaseback for 11 years and the right of first refusal if he ever sells. Win-win. Except for them. So that family meeting, it turned into a live show. Movers unloading. A sign-in sheet taped to the front door. Darian greeting them like a polite stranger. My mom's mouth hung open. My dad's fists curled. Maris didn't say a word. They came to threaten me into folding. Instead, they found the door had already closed. My parents didn't explode when they realized I'd sold the house. They just stared like I'd messed up the equation. Like I was a calculator that spit out the wrong answer. Thing is, I grew up knowing exactly where I stood in their math. Maris was the investment, high risk, high maintenance, always in need of reinforcements. I was the fallback fund, the backup plan. If something broke, they dipped into me. Quietly, of course, with that polite edge that made it seem like I should be grateful to help. When I was a kid, I walked or caught the metro bus across town just to get to school. Maris got dropped off in an SUV with heated seats and a new uniform every semester. She had tutors, music lessons, enrichment programs every summer. I got told to stop asking for things we couldn't afford right now. I learned not to ask. Not for money, not for time, not for attention. Asking meant lectures. My mom would say things like, "We're doing the best we can, sweetheart." But she said it with that sugary tone that always ended in guilt. My dad didn't even bother pretending. He'd just say, "This is how it's going to be," and that was the end of it. I remember showing him my first straight A report card in high school. He looked at it for all of 2 seconds before asking, "Did you hear Maris got selected for the leadership circle in her writing club?" Never mind that she'd only gone to 2 meetings. Didn't matter. She was the bright one. I was the reliable one. My dad always backed her career moves like he was her agent. When she switched majors 3 times in college, he called it adaptability. When I worked full-time through school and took 5 years to finish, he called it slow. Grandma Rowena was the only one who didn't treat me like a second job. She'd say, "You're my steady one," and it actually felt like a compliment, not a consolation prize. She didn't shower me with praise. She just showed up, asked real questions, paid attention. When I was 16, I asked her why my parents bent over backward for Maris. She didn't dodge. She just looked at me and said, "They don't love her more. They need her reflection. You remind them of their limits." I didn't know what that meant at the time. I do now. I spent my whole adult life doing what I was supposed to do. Worked through weekends, earned my CPA, took the least amount of vacation possible, climbed the finance ladder like it was the only ladder that mattered. And I was good. Still am. But every time Maris fumbled, they made a cushion for her to land on. When I stumbled, I got told, "You'll be fine. You're strong." They never stopped expecting me to carry the difference. They could strip me down to the bone and still not take that house from me. Not because it was expensive, but because it was the first place in my life that didn't demand I prove my worth to stay. Grandma's house in Pasadena sat on a quiet, tree-lined block that looked like something from a movie, but it wasn't fake. Madison Heights had old houses with soul, the kind with stained glass that glowed in the morning, wood floors that creaked like they were telling secrets, and neighbors who noticed if you didn't wave back. That wraparound porch was where I learned to sit still without punishment. Grandma would bring out lemon water in summer or tea in winter and just let me exist. No guilt, no tests, no lectures, just quiet. I didn't know how rare that was until I was grown and still chasing that kind of peace. Inside the house, every corner had her fingerprints. Vintage dishes, framed photos from 5 different decades, a grandfather clock that ticked louder than it should have but felt like comfort. Holidays weren't Instagram perfect, but they were real. We played board games at that wobbly dining table, ate simple food, and laughed without checking phones every 2 minutes. My parents didn't stay long when they visited, usually just enough time to drop off Maris and act like they were doing Rowena a favor. Maris would pose for a picture in front of the tree or out in the garden, and then they'd vanish. Grandma never said much after they left, just that little sigh and shake of her head. She passed a few days after Christmas, 92 years old. No drawn-out drama, just a quiet exit the way she lived. I didn't cry right away. I handled the logistics, picked up the phone, sorted through her things like someone who was used to being the adult in every room. Mid-January, I sat in a small law office in South Pasadena, across from Merritt Hales, Rowena's estate attorney. Merritt didn't do fluff. She had a voice like gravel and paperwork already color-coded. She read the will out loud like she did it every day, but when she said, "The property at Madison Heights shall pass solely and without condition to Tobin Irving," her tone changed just slightly, like she knew the blowback that would follow. I didn't smile. I didn't pump my fist. I just nodded and asked what I needed to sign. The house wasn't some trophy to me. It was survival. I was living in a rented duplex in Alhambra at the time, pulling 50-minute commutes to work, patching leaks with duct tape, and praying my brakes didn't go out before I got paid again. I wasn't drowning, but I wasn't swimming either. I was just treading water. That house meant no more walking the financial cliff every single month. It meant maybe I could take a breath without waiting for the next shoe to drop. And I knew, absolutely knew, the second my parents heard about it, they'd come circling like they always did when something good landed in my lap. Especially now that Maris and I worked at the same company, and she'd managed to claw her way into a flashy title she couldn't carry. I didn't envy her, but I knew what was coming. This house wasn't Grandma picking favorites. It was her locking the door before they could break it down. Once my parents realized the house was legally mine, the pressure campaign started like clockwork. They didn't jump straight to threats. First, they tried the polite version, like salespeople easing into a pitch. My mom called with that syrupy tone she used whenever she wanted something. I could practically hear the fake smile through the phone. Tobin, sweetheart, it's a big responsibility owning a historic property like that. Maybe it's a little too much for one person. I leaned against my kitchen counter while she talked, staring at the cracked tile floor in my rental. I think I can manage a house, I said. My dad took the phone from her immediately. He always preferred the reasonable man routine. Selling it is the practical solution, he said in that calm, final voice. You split the money between the family. Everyone wins. That's how families stay together. Families stay together. The phrase sounded rehearsed. Maris called later that night. She didn't even try to hide the performance. Her voice shook like she was reading stage directions. I'm finally building something for myself, she said. You know how hard things have been for me lately. I can't do it without help. That almost made me laugh, but I kept it to myself. Help had basically been Maris's full-time job since high school. When the calls didn't work, the texts started. Morning messages, late-night guilt bombs, random paragraphs during work hours. I counted them once out of pure curiosity. 68 messages in 9 days. Most of them were the same sentence wearing different clothes. Family shares. Don't be selfish. Think about your sister. Then my Aunt Nedra called. Nedra had always been the peacemaker in the extended family. She talked gently, like someone defusing a bomb. Honey, your parents are worried this situation could tear everyone apart, she said. Maybe there's a compromise. I recognized my mom's script immediately. Nedra wasn't trying to manipulate me, but she was carrying their words like a messenger pigeon. I appreciate the concern, I told her, keeping my voice steady. But this isn't a negotiation. She sighed quietly, and the call ended there. The part that really pushed my nerves was my mom playing the health card. She started sending messages about stress and blood pressure, like my refusal was causing a medical crisis. You're making me sick with worry, she wrote one night. My doctor says stress is dangerous at my age. It was the same trick she used when I was a kid. Make my boundaries sound like cruelty. Then came the official move. My dad sent a message saying we'd meet, as a family, at Merritt Hales's office to talk through the future of the property. The wording sounded neutral, but I knew better. My parents never scheduled meetings unless they thought they were about to win. The day we met, I walked into Merritt's conference room and immediately noticed the extra person sitting beside my parents. She was tall, sharp-eyed, and wearing a bright red blazer that looked like it belonged in a courtroom drama. Brenna Lask, she said briskly, real estate consultant. She didn't shake my hand. Instead, she slid a stack of papers across the table toward me like we were already closing a deal. We just need a quick signature to begin the process, she said confidently. I picked up the top page and started reading. Within 30 seconds, the trick jumped out at me. This wasn't an evaluation form. It was a preliminary listing authorization that would allow her to quietly start marketing the house as if I had already agreed to sell. I leaned toward Merritt and spoke quietly. You should take a look at this. Merritt read the document, and her expression changed immediately. She set the papers down with slow precision, then looked directly at Brenna. Explain to me, Merritt said calmly, why you are presenting my client with a listing authorization he never requested. Brenna smiled too quickly. Oh, it's simply a starting point. Most families find it helpful to begin the process early. Merritt didn't blink. Answer the question. Brenna started talking faster, circling the explanation instead of landing on it. After my parents left that meeting, Merritt closed the office door and looked straight at me. That woman is not neutral, she said. Your parents brought her here as leverage. She tapped the paperwork once with her finger. They were hoping you'd sign under pressure before realizing what you agreed to. I nodded slowly, folded the document, and slid it back across the table. Then I stood up and walked out of the office. I didn't respond right away to my dad's message. He'd written, "Sell and split it or you're not our son," like he was closing a business deal, not threatening his own kid. I stared at that screen in my kitchen for over an hour, just sitting there with the overhead light buzzing and the fridge making that low hum that fills up a room when everything else goes quiet. I wasn't surprised. That was the worst part. I'd been hearing different versions of that line since I was 10 years old. When he didn't get what he wanted, he pulled rank. If that didn't work, he pulled the plug. While I was still sitting there, a text came in from an unknown number. "Tobin, this is Darian Kwan. I heard you may be moving a property in Pasadena. Can we talk?" It took me a second to place the name. Then it hit. Darian from Cal Poly. Finance program. I wouldn't call us close, but we ran in similar circles. We'd had enough beers and classes together that he knew the lay of my family. He also knew Maris. Back then, she used to drop by campus just to visit, which always turned into her holding court like she was scouting for a reality show. I called him. Before I could even explain the mess, he said, "If you want this quiet, I can keep it quiet. If you want it clean, I can keep it clean." We met 2 days later in a quiet cafe near South Pasadena. No small talk, no drama. I told him the truth. I didn't want a war. I just wanted to breathe without someone trying to sell the air around me. Darian laid it out. Juniper and Stone had been looking for a residential creative space. Not just a showroom, something real. A house with character, where they could shoot campaigns, host small walkthroughs, bring in clients and influencers for photo shoots. Home goods, skincare, brand experiences. And Rowena's house? It was nearly perfect. "This isn't charity," he told me. "It's a business move, but it solves both our problems." He offered $1,115,000 through an LLC. Clean transaction, no circus. I'd stay as tenant with a lease, 11 years at $3,250 per month, which was a joke in that zip code, especially with yard access. Plus, I got first refusal rights if he ever sold. I ran it by Merritt. She combed every clause, added protections in case my parents tried to call fraud or claim undue influence. She even structured the lease so they couldn't use it against me in a dispute later. Every loophole they might exploit, she slammed shut. The deed recorded with LA County 5 days before the meeting my parents had planned to corner me at the house. I didn't tell them. They didn't deserve prep time. They'd ambushed me my whole life. This was just the first time they arrived late. I moved into Rowena's place that same week under the lease back. Boxes, kitchen mug, everything. So by the time they came pounding on the door, it already felt like home again. What surprised me most was how calm I felt through the whole thing. I wasn't riding high. I wasn't gloating. I was just steady. Like I'd stopped waiting for their approval and finally walked out of a burning building with the door closed behind me. The family meeting was set for a Tuesday afternoon in late February. Merritt had cleared her calendar, locked the door early, and stacked the estate paperwork like she expected trouble. And she wasn't wrong. My parents walked in first, acting like they were there out of mercy. My dad went straight for the power seat and spoke before anyone else even settled. "We're here to finalize the sale today," he announced, like he was the executor and not just the loudest voice in the room. Merritt didn't flinch. She just folded her hands and waited. My mom followed up with her wounded angel routine. "This is breaking our hearts, Tobin, truly. Why are you doing this to your sister?" I didn't answer. Not yet. Maris came in blinking back tears, like someone had pressed a button on her face. She had on a soft pastel blouse, like she was trying to look vulnerable, and her boyfriend Callan trailed behind her like he was attending a design critique, not a family ambush. He didn't say anything, just looked around the office like the furniture wasn't up to his standards. Then came Brenna. Same red blazer, same smug confidence. She didn't sit. She stood next to my parents and started pulling offer sheets from a manila folder, spreading them across the table like poker cards. "These are a few strong bids we've already lined up," she said. "All above list. We're in a seller's market, so you're in a great position." I didn't touch the papers. Neither did Merritt. That's when my dad leaned forward, folding his hands like he was building a case. If you think this is going to hold, you're wrong. We can challenge the will. There's evidence of undue influence, questions about mental capacity. You'll be forced to cooperate eventually. Merritt tilted her head slightly. I'd love to see that evidence, she said, dry as toast. Rowena had not one but two capacity evaluations prior to signing the will, both conducted by court-recognized professionals. Your claim won't survive a hearing. That shut him down for about 10 seconds. Then he went for the cheap shot. What do you need a house like that for anyway? You're alone. No wife, no kids. You're practical. You don't need it. That line was a knife. Not because it was new, but because it was the same blade they'd been using on me since I was a teenager. I don't need, so I don't get. Brenna saw the opening and made her move. She didn't try another form. She went personal. If this stays messy, she said smoothly, it's going to create discomfort at Juniper and Stone. We're talking HR involvement, risk to your professional reputation. Finance roles require trust. Merritt didn't blink. Threatening a client's employment is not a negotiating tactic. It's harassment. Stop. Silence settled over the room. Nobody moved. I let them talk themselves tired for the next 10 minutes. Every guilt line, every veiled warning, every fake plea for family unity. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. When my dad finally stood and said, "We're going to the house, right now," I just nodded like they'd worn me down. I stepped into the hallway and pulled out my phone, texted one line to Darian. "They're coming." He answered right away. "Good. Everything's ready." We rolled down Madison Heights in a slow, awkward convoy. I was in my car alone. My parents rode with Maris up front like a VIP. Brenna followed in a sleek silver Lexus. Merritt drove herself, cool and deliberate, like someone expecting to take notes at a deposition. As I turned the corner, I spotted Darian's white SUV parked in front of the house. Clean, polished, parked like it belonged there. Right behind it, a large moving truck sat with the back wide open. Inside, movers were lifting a long table out like they were staging a high-end showroom. Maris saw it next. I watched her face in the side mirror as the realization hit. Her mouth tightened, color drained. She knew what Darian drove. She'd seen his head of security before. That man didn't show up for casual lunches. My mom didn't even pause. She launched into her usual tone of authority, yelling before the car even came to a full stop. "What is going on here, Tobin? Why are there strangers at Rowena's house?" She marched across the lawn like it was still hers, heels snapping against the walkway like gavel strikes. My dad followed, quieter but twice as dangerous. He wasn't a yeller. He was a door slammer, a contract waiver, a "let me speak to your supervisor" type with a law blog bookmarked on his phone. Neighbors peeked out almost instantly. Minji Park stood just off her porch, arms folded. Dale Brunson leaned on his fence across the street. A few others stepped out too, faces I recognized from Grandma's block parties and front yard garden tours. Pasadena streets like this, they notice everything. And today, they got a show. My dad didn't stop at the steps. He marched straight to the front door and grabbed the handle like it was still his to open. But before he could turn it, the door opened from inside. And there stood Darian, perfectly still, calm, unbothered. Button-down shirt, tailored slacks, not a single hair out of place. He didn't flinch. He looked like a man who'd been expecting a delivery window, not a blood feud. "Afternoon," he said. Maris tried to pivot fast, switching into her professional voice. "Darian, I didn't realize you were involved. We were just..." He cut her off gently but firmly. "Good to see you, Maris." No warmth, just workplace distance, like she was someone in middle management who forgot her place in the org chart. Brenna moved forward fast, pulling that same folder out of her bag. "We've already collected offers. If we could just coordinate..." Darian didn't blink. "I'm not a buyer," he said. "I'm the owner." That line hit the air hard, heavy, and final. My mom froze mid-step, lips parted like she couldn't process what she'd just heard. My dad's face went red immediately. "This is fraud," he snapped. "You pressured him. This will never hold." Merritt stepped beside me, calm as a surgeon. "The sale recorded with the county 5 days ago. Above market. Fully compliant. You're done here." And then, as if choreographed, the movers walked right past my parents, carrying the long walnut conference table through the front door like it was just another Tuesday. Darian stepped aside to let them through. "This house is now Juniper and Stone's residential creative hub," he said evenly. "Your team will be working here, Maris." She looked like she'd swallowed glass. My dad wasn't ready to lose, so of course he didn't leave quietly. He kept barking accusations, fraud, manipulation, elder abuse, until Darian's head of security stepped forward just enough to make a point. Not aggressive, just present. The kind of move that says, "This is your last freebie." By that point, half the street was watching. A few neighbors had their phones out. Minji held hers low like she didn't want to make a scene, but Dale? Dale filmed openly from across the yard like he was covering a high school brawl. Then my mom tried a full-on dramatic lunge at me. It wasn't violent, but it was loud. Hands in the air, wild voice, some version of, "How could you?" I took one step back. Merritt didn't. "You touch him," she said sharply, "and I'll file the report myself. This is private property." That stopped the show. Darian stayed calm the whole time. He didn't yell. He just said, "You're trespassing. I'm asking you to leave once. If you stay, I call Pasadena PD." That finally moved my dad. He grabbed my mom's arm, turned her toward the car, and muttered something low enough that even I couldn't hear. Maris looked like she wanted to melt through the pavement. The second their tires left the curb, the show moved online. Aunt Nedra texted me 2 hours later with screenshots from Facebook. My mom had posted a long paragraph under a soft filtered photo of Grandma's porch. "When your own child forgets what family means, betrays everything they were raised to honor, and sells out for greed, what's left?" She tagged no one but left it public. That was her mistake. Minji commented first. Rowena told us what really happened. Then Dale. We watched Tobin care for her when no one else did, for years. 2 more neighbors added quiet confirmations. One wrote, "He was there every weekend." Another posted a photo from last spring, me fixing the back steps with Grandma watching from a lawn chair, smiling. My mom started deleting the comments. That just made people post more. Someone in the neighborhood group chat uploaded a whole folder of photos. Me grocery shopping with Grandma, planting her tomatoes, sitting next to her at the annual block potluck. Real life, not just curated moments. That night, I got a text from Brenna. "I didn't know it was that kind of situation. I was misled. I'm sorry." Merritt saw it too. She was copied on all real estate communication by then, and just replied to me with 4 words. "Do not respond. Logged." A few days later, Darian called to give me a heads up. My parents had tried contacting him directly. First came flattery, offers to buy it back for whatever it takes. When that failed, my dad switched to legal threats. "Everything goes through counsel," Darian said, almost amused. "They don't seem to understand what that means." Meanwhile, Maris blew up my phone. Long messages, paragraphs. First guilt, then rage, then desperation. "You're ruining my career. You embarrassed me in front of the whole team. You need to fix this." I never answered. The only message I sent was to Aunt Nedra. "I'm okay. I'm not fighting anymore. I'm living." The first Monday the Creative Hub launched, I stayed upstairs and made coffee in Grandma's kitchen like it was any other morning. Same pot, same mug, same creaky drawer where she used to keep the good spoons. Only difference was the clipboard hanging downstairs with a sign-in sheet and a printed schedule for photo shoots. I didn't need to see anyone to know they were there. Old houses carry sound in a way new builds don't. I heard movement, voices, the soft bump of rolling carts, the occasional sharp phrase floating up through the vents. At one point, someone dropped something heavy and muttered under their breath. Maris showed up late. I didn't see her, I just knew her walk. Sharp, fast heels, and that stiff way she spoke when she was trying to shift blame. I heard her mutter something about these floors being uneven to someone, like the house itself was making her unprofessional. Later that week, I got more of the story from Darian during a check-in call, and from one of my coworkers who pulled me aside at the office. "Just a heads up," he said, low and quick. "Your sister's been asking around about you, trying to stir up something." Turns out, Maris had been planting little comments about how awkward it was to work downstairs from me. She floated the idea to HR that my presence made it a hostile work environment. Tried to spin it like I was looming over the team from above, even though I hadn't stepped foot downstairs once since opening day. The problem for her was that her boss, Tamsin Quo, didn't play games. Tamsin was sharp, no nonsense, and famously allergic to drama. She didn't care about family politics. She cared about numbers, outcomes, and whether things got done on time. When Maris brought her concerns forward, Tamsin didn't coddle her. She asked for specifics. What did Tobin do? What policies were violated? Were any team members uncomfortable? And when Maris couldn't give real answers, the conversation flipped. Tamsin started asking about missed deadlines, half-finished pitch decks, sloppy briefs that needed rewrites, a client call Maris forgot to confirm. Suddenly, Maris's hostile environment claim turned into a performance review. I didn't hear it from HR. I heard it from Darian the next day. "She's being put on an improvement plan," he said. "Not because of you, because of the metrics." Then Aunt Nedra sent me a voice note, Maris sobbing on speakerphone, telling my mom she was being punished for trying to speak up. What Maris didn't understand was that Darian hadn't bought the house for revenge. He bought it because it made business sense. But he ran the hub like a professional space. Deadlines, deliverables, no special treatment. She thought she could pull rank. Tamsin didn't care. The final crack was Callan. He bailed the week after she got written up. She tried to frame it like it was mutual. We decided to go separate ways. But Nedra got the real version in a midnight call. Callan left because the image management got exhausting. By mid-March, Maris was spiraling. She showed up late, snapped at the team, cried in meetings, blamed the wrong people. Tamsin kept documentation on every incident. The day it ended, Darian called me first. "This was performance-based," he said, "not personal. I need you to know that." And I believed him, because I'd already heard the pattern echoing through the floorboards for weeks. The night after Maris got fired, the house was so still it almost felt new. No tires crunching the curb, no muffled voices from below, no energy hanging in the air like someone was trying to sell something. Just creaks in the floorboards and the steady tick of Grandma's old wall clock, like the place could finally exhale after months of holding its breath. My phone lit up close to midnight. It was my mom. I let it ring twice before answering. Her voice came through tight and controlled, always her tone right before the guilt hammer dropped. "You broke this family, Tobin." I leaned back in the kitchen chair, feet flat on the tile. "No," I said calmly. "You're just mad you can't move me anymore." She hung up without a word. 2 weeks later, Darian officially relocated the hub to a commercial space in Highland Park. The residential setup had always been temporary. Permits, insurance, and the neighbor traffic made it a short bridge until the commercial build-out was ready. The creative team moved out in 1 day. No drama, no explanation, just efficiency. My lease stayed intact, untouched, just like Merritt wrote it. 11 years, first refusal rights, and no clause left for my parents to sink into. A few days after the move, I finally opened a taped-up box I'd been avoiding in the back of Grandma's closet. It smelled faintly of cedar and dust. I expected old receipts or maybe letters from church ladies. Instead, I found a white envelope marked in neat cursive. For Tobin. Only Tobin. The letter inside was dated almost 6 years earlier. She'd seen it all coming. The manipulation, the guilt plays, the threats dressed up as what's best for the family. She called my parents by name, Marla and Gordon, and told me exactly how they'd come for the house. Said they'd try to wrap it in love and shame me into handing it over. And then she wrote one line that knocked the wind out of me. The strongest men I've known were the ones who stopped negotiating with people who only love control. I didn't cry, didn't even feel the tears start. I just sat at her kitchen table, letter in hand, while that sentence echoed around the place like it had been waiting years to be heard. Something uncoiled in my chest that had been tight since childhood. Aunt Nedra stopped by 2 days later with a peach cobbler and a guilty look. She admitted she'd been used, repeated things she didn't believe because she didn't want to make waves. Then she looked at me and grinned. Rowena would have been proud. You outpapered them all. My parents made one last swing before they gave up, called Darian again, offered some ridiculous buyback deal, then told relatives I'd stolen the house. I didn't correct the story. I didn't need to. The facts were already signed, stamped, and sitting in county records. By the end of the month, they listed their place and started whispering about moving out of state for a fresh start. That's what people say when they've been seen for who they really are. And me? I stayed. I watered the garden. I paid my rent on time. I saved. Because Grandma didn't just leave me a house. She handed me freedom. And I made it permanent. Hold up. Can I ask you something real quick? If you've got the hype button, tap it to support this video and help it reach more people. Then subscribe and hit like. It seriously matters and it's one click. And drop a comment. When family only shows up to take, do you still owe them anything? Or is it time to lock the door for good?